So hi, everybody. My name is Brian Kohler. For those of you I haven't had the chance to meet in person, I am the planetarium supervisor in Mystic, Connecticut at the Mystic Seaport Museum. We are a maritime history museum in Mystic, Connecticut. We had the pleasure of hosting eLIPS way back in 2014, which I always liked. Hermione Carey was approximately 6 months after I started working there. It was literally my first order of business upon arriving in the planetarium was work with Carrie to plan eLIPS, and it was super fun, and I've been hooked ever since. The session that I would like to share with you all today is called Storytelling from Scratch. It is a work in progress, something that we are really just kind of getting off the ground here in Mystic, Connecticut, but I wanted to give you all the chance to see what we're doing, to participate in what we're doing, and I'd love any feedback that anybody has on it. And if you want some inspiration to steal this activity for yourself, then please feel free. For us, this is the intersection where astronomy and maritime history and creative writing all meet. And I'm not sure if those three subjects really come together in too many other instances, but we had an unusual turn of events that led to this activity being developed. So one of my favorite things about coming to eLIPS is I learn so much, and I pick up on all the little things, whether it's a new program I want to try or a new contact that I want to reach out to. And so in the spirit of me being very good at stealing stuff from eLIPS, I would like to steal a slide that I saw 48 hours ago in Sarah Schultz's presentation, and I stole her roadmap. Because I figured that would be the fun way for me to background and introduce how we got to developing this activity. And speaking of stealing from eLIPS, I'm going to go even further back and throw a shout out to somebody who I don't believe is in the room right now, but back in August of 2016, while we were at Spitz headquarters at eLIPS, Patty Seaton gave a session about poetry in the dome. Raise your hands if you remember Poetry in the Dome. It was really cool, right? So I kind of tucked that in the back of my head and said, all right, if I ever get the opportunity to do something like that, maybe I'll revisit it. But unfortunately, like some other things at eLIPS, it gets buried under a pile of papers and you kind of move on to other projects, other things take precedence. But there it was, kind of lingering in the back of my mind. A couple of summers later, I found myself across the street from my museum in a big brick building that houses our collections vault. I was doing a little research for a summer program about navigation, and I stumbled across something, but I don't want to tell you what it is just yet. Just know that that was another turning point in this moment here. In November of 2019, our museum received a grant to collaborate with middle school students on creative writing. As you might have guessed, this is a project I wasn't really supposed to be a part of. After all, we are the science wing of the Maritime History and Humanities Museum. So I didn't really know much about it other than, oh, cool, we got that grant. Somebody else will probably take care of that. But then, of course, the pandemic happened. The museum closed like everybody's museums closed. We reopened with a lot of safety protocols, and for a long time, our planetarium was carrying our education department. We couldn't do field trips. We couldn't do in-school programs. We were confined to virtual, and by sheer nature of the content we teach, our planetarium programs seem to translate really well to virtual programs. This thing that kind of really tipped this program over the edge was that this past December, we got a new president at the Mystic Seaport Museum. He is a fantastic, cheeky British man who came to us from Jamestown, Virginia, and he has a theater background. I know, you're all getting really excited like I am, because he is hugely a fan of the planetarium. I'm not going to lie, I could not get our previous president to even show up for a show, let alone take a meeting with me. This guy has been to like a dozen planetarium shows. I'm not actually sure what else he does besides come to the planetarium, but he's fascinated by what we do because he loves the idea of storytelling. And he's trying to get that all throughout our museum, whether it's the historical role players in costume or even somebody just aboard a ship talking about where that ship went and what it did. He is all about storytelling. So now, this past spring, we end up kind of circling back with these middle school students from New London, Connecticut. Now, all we know about them is their previous programming experience here in Mystic basically revolved around the history of whaling in New England. Some of you may know that here in Mystic Seaport Museum, we have the last wooden whaling ship in the world. And while we are by no means anti-whales or pro-whaling, we teach it as an historical turning point for our nation, because prior to power lines running across the country, whale oil really kind of made the world go round. So with the planetarium being the only show in town, and with this background, we need to figure out how to somehow merge astronomy, whaling, and middle school English to satisfy the needs of this grant. So where do we land? We land on maritime creative writing. What's maritime creative writing, you ask? I'm so glad you asked, because you are about to do it. In a few moments, I am going to send you guys off in a breakout rooms. And within these rooms, I am going to ask you as a team to create a short story based off of one single sentence. I am going to give you a sentence out of context that has a slight astronomical connotation to it. And then I'm going to challenge you to compose a very, very short story around that sentence. But there's a twist, because there's always a twist, right? It wouldn't be fun if there wasn't a twist. Here's a twist, guys. Some of you are going to be in breakout rooms where the sentence I give you has to be the first sentence of your story. I'm going to give the same sentence to the other groups. And for some of you, it has to be the last sentence of your story. And of course, for some of our groups, I am going to ask you to put that sentence squarely in the center of your story. This is how we're going to ensure a little bit of variety here, but it also is going to get you thinking. And by the way, I'll talk a little bit at the end about this, but I mentioned this is something we've been trying out with these local middle school students. And the program you're about to see is exactly how we deliver it, because we really do challenge them to think about where this moment fits in to the story. All right, so now I'm going to share the sentence with you, and then we're going to head over to the breakout rooms, okay? The sentence that every single one of you is going to somehow incorporate into your story today is the following sentence. Today has been very fine with the wind at north by northeast most of the time, but very light. Saw the North Star for the first time. If anybody would like, you can click on that link or scan that code, and you will get a permanent version of that sentence up on your screen. And now, Carrie, if you could help me out, I think we've got 42 participants. I think 8 breakout rooms should do pretty nicely. And I will be visiting your breakout rooms to tell you where your sentence is going. Everybody's back. Hello, you all look slightly less disheveled than when I left you. No, all right. So, hello, everybody. I am very excited to hear what you have come up with. But first, I want to mention what you probably have figured out by yourselves, which is when we do this activity with middle school students, I usually give them a little more time. Obviously, with the constraints of a planetarium conference, I realize I gave you guys a little bit of a hasty errand. But since I know at least one group has got, quote, got their story straight, to use their words, I am very curious to hear what you all came up with. Why don't we start with one of the brave volunteer groups who has this sentence at the beginning of their story? I'm looking at groups 1, 2, and 3. Who would like to go? I see April's hand up.
It's always good to go first, because then you don't get compared to anybody else. Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Go. Emily, do you have the sentence or the Google Doc? Could you read it?
Today has been very fine with the wind at northeast most of the time, but very light. Saw the North Star for the first time. And then I wrote, it has been a long journey from Polaris B, but my mission is clear. So our idea was the character in question, writing this down and recording this, is an alien named Quasi. He's an interstellar, well, sorry, he's not an alien. He's an interstellar visitor. He's a robot created by Green Space, which is the intergalactic equivalent of Greenpeace. And his mission is to sabotage the whaling ship because he is working on preserving the whale song, which is a valuable resource. He is returning home back to his planet around Polaris, and his ship has just spotted the light of the North Star with a stellar wind in the northeast direction.
See, this is why I wanted to bring you guys on board for this. I mean, wow, that's pretty epic. That is pretty epic. I love the robot working for good. I feel like that's something that Quasi can definitely get behind. And Carissa agrees. Awesome. Very nice, team. I don't know if you guys are team 1, 2, or 3, but
I think we're 3.
3. All right. Can I get somebody from team 1 or 2 to share?
I'll go next.
Okay.
Even though now I have to follow that, but that's fine. It's fine, Emily. It's fine. So we kind of took things in a different direction, maybe a more dismal direction. Yes, today has been very fine with the wind at northeast most of the time. But the North Star for the first time took our bearings, determined our latitude. Our ship has seen famine, and there is no fresh water, and we are just finding out how far off course we have drifted. We hope whoever finds this record understands our story. We do see rain in the distance. Okay. I'll take it. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm on board with that. I mean, it's creative writing. Like who doesn't like a good horror story, right?
So I think we saw it kind of as, and anyone else in the group can pipe in, as kind of a lost ship. If they're seeing the North Star for the first time, maybe they were traveling somewhere near the equator or in the southern hemisphere and were not able to see it for a while, so they had a harder time determining their position, and were just able to figure out where they were and have been through some hardships, but things are looking up, hopefully, with that rain and fresh water in the distance.
Okay, well done. Now there is one more group out there who put this sentence at the beginning of their story, correct?
We kind of did a round robin, make it up as we go story, starting with the first sentence. Today has been a very fine wind at the northeast. Most of the time it was very light and saw the North Star for the first time. Keith, do you remember?
With the winds as they are, we should be able to make it across the desert by the end of the week. And then it's not the brightest, although I thought it would be. Glad I brought this ice cold water with a twist of lime. Once we get through the desert back to the shore, we'll be Maritime. We'll finally be able to take off on our boat sailing into the wind and then left back into the desert. If clouds roll in, staying by the coast will keep us on our path to the Queen's coronation somewhere in the Northern Hemisphere.
Wow. Okay. So this is 3 very different stories, right? We have one based on land, one based on water, and one based in a galaxy far, far away. No, in our galaxy, but far, far away. So that's pretty cool. Now, the next couple of groups, I tasked with putting the sentence in the middle of their story, meaning you're going to have to build something and then have that moment and then go from there. So would somebody from groups 4, 5, or 6 like to volunteer to share?
So we're on an important mission. We must get to our destination on time. We're so bored. Why are these field trips so boring? At least we have our phones to help us pass the time. God, all the phones just died. Someone says it must be a massive solar flare. The aurora are amazing. Today has been very fine with the wind at northeast most of the time, but very light. We saw the North Star for the first time. Someone suggests that we navigate by the stars to get back on track. The crews come together and started sharing our knowledge and navigation stories. With our collective knowledge, we end up right back on track. However, we decide to keep navigating. And they say that you can see our ship when the aurora are bright.
Ooh, Interesting. There's a little bit of mystery there. I couldn't tell exactly like where we were for a few moments. That was kind of cool. Excellent. All right. Another sentence in the middle, perhaps from Jenny and your team.
I was in the same group, but she
You're
did
in
it
the same
a lot
group.
better.
Oh,
So
okay.
that was good that you picked her.
Excellent. So we've got two more groups. Sentence in the middle, right?
I was in group 6 with Barbara and Sarah and Mike, and ours is shorter, but I really like it. Okay, so our story goes, call me Ishmael. We've been sailing for 10 days, and this is my first chance to get some fresh air above deck. Today has been very fine with the wind at north-northeast most of the time, but very light. Saw the North Star for the first time. I heard the sailors talking about it and how important it is to our journey. I hope my freedom is as sweet as the ocean air. The end.
Wow. Creative writing with a slight dash of plagiarism. I like it. That was good. That was very nice. I appreciate the Moby Dick reference. If anyone does, it'll be me. Nicely done. That was good. Final group in the middle. Yes. One more group.
I got it.
All right. Jerry, you made it just in time.
Okay. So ours is great sailing here on the Titanic. Little chilly and cloudy these past few days. Today has been very fine with the wind at north-northeast most of the time, but very light. Saw the North Star for the first time. It's incredible to see all of the stars, unlike back at home. The music is lovely. Oh my, what's that in the distance?
See that that creative writing story actually turned up in a bottle among the wreckage. No, that was nice, nicely done. I see what you did there. It's a whole lot of plagiarism going on here. No,
it's historical fiction.
There you go. Okay, that's all of our middle groups, right? I believe we have 2 groups left. Now, for the groups who had to compose their entire story to end in this very moment, maybe a bit of a different twist.
All right, so we were with group 8. So our journey begins on a bleak night in the south with the sky obscured by the clouds. And we're looking for some type of guide, but rough waters are ahead. But we continue on and persevere following the wind. And today has been very fine with the wind and north-northeast most of the time, but very light. Saw the North Star for the first time.
Okay, very nice. Brings us right to that climactic quote moment. All right, we have one more group, yes?
All right, are you ready? Stormy skies, rough seas during the whale hunt. We lost the cook when a big wave hit. And all the oranges went overboard. Such a relief this morning. Today has been very fine with the wind at north-northeast most of the time, but very light. Saw the North Star for the first time.
Nice. And very well read too. It's fun to see the emotion come off the page there. That was well done. So that's that poor cook, right? And the poor crew, right? Because with no oranges, we're all going to get scurvy now, right?
No golden apples.
Well, thank you all for participating in that, by the way. You are all very good sports, and that was a really fun cross-section of all kinds of different ideas. As we got further on, it looks like most of you did tend to go the Maritime route, which I have to say, because these middle school students know who they're visiting and where they're from, that's a very common direction. But I thought it was kind of fun to see some of you go outside the box and bring us into the desert or bring us out into space. That was kind of cool. I want to be very clear that what I'm about to tell you is not the right answer. I always stress to groups that the whole point of this exercise is to be creative, and there is no right answer. But groups will often wonder, where did you pull this sentence from? And where I pulled this sentence from was way back in the summer of 2018, when I was across the street in our collections vault. I came across the logbook from the Charles W. Morgan. And in May of 1886, the Charles W. Morgan was spending somewhere close to 3 years in the southern Pacific Ocean. Turns out the New England whaling fleet had decimated whale populations in the northern Atlantic. So they moved to the southern Atlantic. When all of that was gone, they went around Cape Horn and started clearing out the Pacific Ocean. Following this long time in the southern hemisphere, on its return journey home, the ship rounded Cape Horn, and just after crossing the equator, the sentence you just read was the official logbook entry for May 19th of 1886. Literally, that's all the second mate wrote. Today has been very fine with the wind at north by northeast most of the time, but very light. Saw the North Star for the first time. It sounds like some of you kind of steered towards that in your stories. Not like the first time I've ever seen the North Star in my life, but yeah, so one of the groups, again, I'm not saying right or wrong, but one of the groups mentioned the concept of the equator and latitude and not being able to see the North Star in the southern hemisphere. So depending on what kind of a background the students have in astronomy, and if they've been to the planetarium and know a little bit about where you do and don't see the North Star. Some of you also played the weather angle and talked about clouds clearing, enabling you to see the North Star. But all in all, I think you guys did a really great job with this. It was a lot of fun sharing it with you. Middle school classrooms, mostly 6th grade, they generally seem to enjoy the exercise. I think they enjoy anything that involves them not dealing with their particular teacher for 45 minutes. So, but it's been fun to play around and test it out, to be more interdisciplinary in the planetarium. And so being able to incorporate the history and incorporate the writing, it really makes this exercise a multi-subject sort of thing. And applaud yourselves, by the way, because you guys did all the work. I had the easy job.
I have questions for Brian.
Sure.
I always have questions for Brian.
It wouldn't be lips if you didn't, Keith.
What is the context in which you do this exercise? Like, do you actually have them do groups like we did, or does each student do their own? Because I think for me, one of the problems in the group was I could go, but in 10 minutes to have 4 of us agree, right, and feel like everyone got a chance to be heard, I think was a challenge.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. So I did have you guys working in groups because it was lips and it was the spirit of it all. But yes, Keith, when we present this program to a single classroom of middle school students, so 25 kids, give or take, and I encourage them to each compose their own paragraph. And I do try to give them some parameters. Kids can be very overwhelmed by, oh my gosh, I could never write a whole story. And it's like, you know what? I gave you 1 sentence. Give me 2 on this side, give me 2 on that side, put this sentence right in the middle and you can do this. But yeah, I definitely do have them working individually because something with the timing and the collaborative nature, yeah, I could see that there were some complicated parts, but you guys can handle it. But a really good question, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's a great question, Jeff. So the schools generally give us an hour, and the only issue with that is with a classroom of 25 kids, you're never going to be able to get everybody to report out. The good news is they're middle school kids. So guess how many of them want to report out? So, chances are we'll take the 2 or 3 students who are actually proud of their work and want to share. The teacher will call on a few more, and, I'll encourage them that if they want to email it to me privately so that I can read it, but they don't have to be embarrassed by sharing it in front of their students. So the whole program is an hour. We spend basically the amount of time I spent introducing it to you today. That time would be spent kind of calling back to that time they visited the museum. They learned a little bit about whaling. What's it like living on a ship? Okay, now I'm going to give you this sentence and let's make a story. And for that reason, I realized that I'm definitely steering them towards the maritime only version of the story. We almost never get somebody who says, hey, let's be in space. So maybe I could find a way to broaden it a little bit and encourage them to try some different angles.
And but yeah, literally done in your dome.
So this is actually the only way we've been able to do it so far is it's been an in-school program. We have found our local schools are very hesitant to send their students to us for busing reasons and all kinds of reasons. But if they know that the presenter is vaccinated and will be wearing a mask and standing at the front of the room, they seem very happy to have us come into their school. So I could see a version of doing it on the dome, maybe pairing it with a little star show and giving the kids clipboards and you know, the little glow in the dark pens and letting them write in the dark. But right now we've only ever done this as an in-school program so far.
Because Alan, I was thinking that this would be a good interactive piece for Journey by Starlight. We teach a stellar navigation lesson.
Oh, nice! Yeah,
I still think I'm from the hall.
we still, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and Journey by Starlight, there is this. The trip is from Hawaii to Tahiti and then back again. So the North Star appearing is on the return trip.
Right, you'd have that same aspect of crossing the equator. Yeah, yeah. I'll definitely. I'll have to do a Sarah Schultz style. I'll have to do a sequel at a future Lips once we have a chance to try this out in the dome and see if it gets cooler. Or
Brian, I have a question.
Sure.
At Lips 2018, you did a session in Willard Smith that featured part of the logbook. Is this the same sentence?
This is actually a different one. Yeah, so it's a different ship and slightly different setting, but
Okay.
a different twist on the same concept. Yes.
Yeah.
So for those of you who didn't have a chance to join us in Seattle that year, I had presented on a navigation activity where we challenged teams to figure out where you are using a series of clues. And one of the clues was a journal entry from a crew member. So those were all authentic sources, but that was actually a different ship than the one this particular story is referring to.
That was a much harder assignment.
Yeah, that one was tough. You guys, yeah, those of you who got to do what we call the Conrad Challenge. Once a week this summer with our sailing campers, and they actually did really well with it. No offense to you guys, but they were rocking it. Yes, I love the shout out to Digitalis pens. Great for creative writing in the dome.
Got mine right here.
Oh, this was just awesome.
Oh, thank you.
And she's a creative writing person. Well done, Brian.
Oh, all right. Thank you.
Trying to figure out how to bring the astronomy and the creative writing together. So this gives me a lot of ideas.